Good morning, Bobby. There, we're in.
Hi, Jackie.
I'm here. I'll just take care of business while everybody gets together. We're all good.
Hey, everybody, just got out of a meeting. It just went right to the end. How are you all? Awesome. It's a rainy day still. Is it raining where you all are? It kind of feels like nap weather, that's for sure.
Are you telling us to nap right now?
I wish. I think they do that in other countries. They're just probably more advanced than us. We should probably take siestas. Okay, let me close down my darn loud things here. Oh, something interesting. I'm going to share it with you guys. Someone just asked about ash borer stuff, and if you can do the ash tree, treatment yourself. Apparently you can. So I didn't know that. So there's a really nice publication I just shared in the chat, because I had no idea you could do your own ash tree work. If you still have ash trees and you live in a suburban area, you might want to do that, but all our ash trees in our woods are dying. So actually we have one that's still alive, and apparently they're watching those. So if you have one that kind of is alive and other ones are dying, there's actually research going on. They're calling those resilient trees and seeing if they can breed more of those over in Ohio. I think that's interesting. Does anybody lost any ash trees where you live from those ash? 3, Jackie, did you have to have them taken down? Kind of expensive, I know. Yeah. But they're so large of trees that they're dangerous. That's for sure. Okay, I'm going to close this here. Close it. Okay. Bobby said I need to do my quiz first instead of talking, because I know I talk too much. So, but I hope that you're ready. Hope you're ready. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. I love herbaceous plants. It's probably one of my favorites about gardening. So what'd you guys think about last night learning about ornamental plants? Do you guys like ornamental plants too? Me too. Okay, so we're going to start with the first one. Plants sold as annuals in local stores live only 1 year, even if grown in their native habitat. Is that true or false?
I'm going with false.
That's right. Have you guys ever seen some of those tomato trees that live down in Mexico? Like, because, well, I mean, they usually are indoors or somehow protected, but they can live for a very long time, even though they're called an annual. It just depends on their weather. I think that's cool. I mean, it's obviously not a tree. It's just a large vine that's kept going. Okay, number 2. Can you guys see? You can see this, right? When people ask me. Okay. If you plant a perennial that is hardy to zone 7 in your garden, it should survive several years.
Not in my yard.
Okay. That's right. So did you guys talk about our zone? Okay, let's talk about our USDA zones, because I think this is important. I found when I lived down in Houston, which is when I basically started learning how to garden, I thought Indiana was a certain zone. And then I found out it's changed since then. Why?
It's the day.
It is the day, isn't it? Okay.
So just roll with it, babes.
Okay. You're so right. Let it go. Let it go. You're right. Okay. Okay. So I don't know why the website wants to be humongous. Who knows?
While you're doing that, I just realized last year most of the roses I found in the box stores were zone 7.
They were zone 7?
A lot of them were zone 7, hardy zone. Yep. So I changed my view of which ones to look for, let alone other aspects.
Yep. See, I'm having troubles finding now the legend. Let's find the legend. Well, basically, this is Indiana. And I'm sure that this is probably like, I can't find it to tell you. Hold on. Don't you love it when they change websites and try to update things? All right,
I think that's part of living, darling.
I think you're right. I think you're totally right.
Because I get changes to my software when I least expect it.
It keeps us humble, right?
Keeps you on toes.
That's right. Okay, this is weird. Okay, I don't understand why this shows it. Okay, whatever. All right, so we have blue and green. So blue is 5B, green is 6A. And back in the day, it was not like that. Does anybody remember when we were all 5? Does anybody
Yes.
remember that? Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So not to be all dramatic or anything, but climate change is real. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but things change, obviously. And that's why we now are in 6A right here. And we really are in 6A on this right side, east side of Indianapolis. But there's a funny little place right here. I wish I want to go visit them. They're just a little microclimate of 5 within the 6A. I would love to go see where they live. But so what do you guys know what plant hardiness means? What this basically shows for a zone? Yes, a 7 could live here, but you'd want to take it inside to protect it, right? Because it's probably sensitive to our frost. And that's usually what these plant hardiness zones are about, is about what's the coldest our area will get. So 5B, the coldest it usually gets is about -15 to -10 Fahrenheit. Or 6A, the coldest is -10 to -5. So it just needs to know like basically what its roots and what its system can handle of the cold. And that's what the plant hardiness zone map is. I think that's interesting.
The other thing is, I'm interested in putting some things in pots and wintering over them in pots, and that changes the range of hardiness that I have to look for. And I believe one resource suggested at least 2 zones.
Warmer.
Cold. Well, if I wanted them outside, I would like a 3, down to a 3. Because I don't know, some days on my north side of my yard, it's definitely not 5B.
I hear you. That's a good point because, and if you think about it, if you have your roots in a pot, they're more available to that cold air. You're right. And so it's going to get colder to those roots. And so it's not as hardy as if that plant was safely in the ground and the roots were surrounded by the entire earth. I mean, you know what I mean? And so that does insulate it a little bit. You're right, Jack. So basically what you're doing is you're thinking if a plant you have that is in 3A, it may do okay still in your pot, but you know that it wouldn't do well if you got something below 6B, like 7A, 7B, you'd want to put that inside to protect it. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions about the plant hardiness zones? Because I feel like this is very important. Anybody have any questions?
How long ago that changed? Because as far as I'm aware, as long as I've been here, it's always been 6A.
It changed around 2012, I believe. Let's see.
Really?
Huh? Let's see. 1990 U.S. hardiness zones. So this is from the Arbor Day. This animation illustrates the general warming that has occurred from 1990 to 2006. So let's see what this does. So let's see. I don't know. Let's see. So 2006, it must have, so I don't know when the actual changes were on, but this is like, let's look at the differences. Let me go look. I remember looking this up one time and let's see here. 2012. Yep. The new USDA plant hardiness zone map is just changed a little bit, about 5 degrees, it says, and it was 2012. I thought that was interesting because when I was in Texas, I always thought we were always 5. And then when I moved up here in 2003, then I was like, oh, we're not always number 5, we're 6. So 6A. Does that make sense, Vicki? Hope that helped a little bit.
Yeah.
When did you move here, Vicki?
I don't know, early 90s maybe.
Yep, yep. So we were 5
Yeah, it
back.
was probably about 92.
Yep. We used to be 5 back in the day. Yep. All right, let's look at our little guy here. So basically, hardy to zone 7, that basically means how much it can handle cold, usually. Pre-emergent herbicides can be applied anytime after the weeds have appeared. Is that true or false?
False.
False. It's pre-emergent. That's right. Number 4, always cut back ornamental grasses in autumn. Don't wait until spring. True or false?
False.
False. That's right. Pinching a plant will make it grow fuller, wider, and it may produce more flowers. True or false?
True.
True, that's right. And did you know there's actually been research done that even having a little bit of insect damage causes plants to produce more? So scientifically, you don't want to prevent all insect damage because they're actually causing the plant to have a reaction to that and say, oh, I want to produce more leaves or whatever it is it's producing. I think that's interesting. There is obviously a threshold till it's too many insects, but there is scientific proof that a little bit of insect pressure will make flower plants more productive. So when I heard that, I thought that was so cool. The average last frost date is the last date a frost will happen. You know there will never be a frost after that date. I think this is a farce. False. It's false. Yes. Number 7, removing all plant debris from the garden is a pest control technique called sanitation. True or false?
I picked true.
It is true. I feel like I mean, I understand if you have a problem and you need to keep it sanitized. But I think that people are starting to be a little bit more messy thinking about the pollinators because pollinators don't like it too clean. You know what I mean? They need to live in the leaves. So I think people are, but I mean, there's obviously a balancing act. It depends on what you're dealing with in your garden.
Well, I think you need to remove anything that's not
Disease.
healthy
That's right.
or has something bad in it. After that, it's a judgment, I think. There's some of us that will clean to the death, but then there's others of us that's realizing plants need to have a choice in it.
Yes. So basically, you're right. It does depend on what you're dealing with personally. Yes.
You know, a messy yard could be a bad reflection on you in the neighborhood.
It's true. Yep. You have to decide what.
Where you want to deal with your pressures.
Yes, exactly. There's a different layers that you're dealing with. Everyone has their own decisions they have to make. You're right. What is the reason perennials fail to bloom? Is it A, the plant is too young? B, there was too much nitrogen fertilizer? C, there was too much or too little sun? Or D, all can be a reason?
All can be a reason.
That's right. And did they talk about having too much fertilizer? What happens? Did anybody talk about that yesterday?
I think they said it would get really lush and really green, but not necessarily produce a lot of flowers.
That's right, because flowers are kind of made because the plant wants to reproduce and it feels a little bit of stress. So if it's just got all kinds of food, it kind of can't focus on the reproduction aspect. It's just making more leaves. You're right.
I did want to say something, and I don't want to just keep being the pumpkin guy here, but
I'm glad you're the pumpkin guy.
one of the biggest
Right.
things with like large pumpkin growing is producing these massive plants. I mean, you'll cover a 900 to 1,000 square feet of space. I mean, a huge garden space, and they basically push the nitrogen hardcore right at the beginning. You want the plant to grow, grow, grow. You pinch off all the female flowers of pumpkins, the fruit, until you're ready. And then they basically switch it up. They start giving more of the bloom fertilizers and things like that to produce the flowers. And then they stop giving fertilizer for about 2 to 3 weeks during pollination. And then once again, they add it back in once it's there. But I think they also add more like I think potassium as fruit and a few other things, calcium for fruit for the size. But they love nitrogen. Those pumpkin plants love it right at the beginning, and they just need a lot of it. So
That's really smart. So what you're doing is you're making a lot of leaves to promote the growth of that huge pumpkin with that photosynthesis. So you're making a lot of those solar panels at first, so that then it'll take all that energy and put it into that. How many pumpkins do you choose? Do you choose like up to 5 or something?
competitors, they will set it anywhere between 9 to 14 feet from the main primary root. They bury all the vines, the secondary vines coming off the main vine, but then they pinch off all tertiaries. But all the water that comes in from the secondary and primary vines will go to one pumpkin plant. Now, less competitive growers will grow more, but if you grow 4 500-pound pumpkins on one plant, you could have just grown one 2,000-pound pumpkin. So it's all about the size instead of numbers. But I've grown 2 or 3 off of one anyways. I'm not particular necessarily, but yeah, they really do just try to make the plant as big and massive as possible. Then they cut it off and everything goes towards that fruit.
That's cool. That's cool. That's very interesting that pumpkins don't have a limit of how much they grow. Like a flower would stop itself from growing. It wouldn't grow massive dahlia. You know what I mean? Go ahead, Jackie. What were you going to say?
Well, what you just said, I believe that I can grow a massive dahlia if I have the right cultivar and use this process.
Maybe, I don't know.
Why not? Because to me, if you're pushing the green, then you're pushing the flower, then you're taking care of the fruit.
I guess
Fruit is-
dahlias do become really huge. So, but what about like a zinnia?
I don't know if it apply for everything. I agree
Yeah.
with you there, but I do believe that Corey's process is living example of something. The thing I get confused about, am I doing phosphorus for the flower?
Potassium, I believe. It's potassium and calcium that is needed for flowers, I believe.
For flower. And then the phosphorus is what, for the fruit? Or we
I
don't
think
really care?
phosphorus is for the overall plant health. Corey,
Overall.
would you tell me, Corey, what do you do?
And
I
the
get 'em all
root.
mixed.
Roots.
What?
He said, and the roots.
Like I told you earlier, detail is my hell, so I get them mixed up. Good info for me. Thank you.
I like to hear your pumpkin stories because it really is very applicable for these kinds of things. And I'm sure
Totally.
that you guys have made pumpkin genetics so that it will continue to grow huge, right?
They all use the same one. It's a man named Howard Dill up in Nova Scotia created the line that everyone uses, the same line that he created back in the 80s. It's called the Dill Atlantic. So every single pumpkin uses a Dill Atlantic. Now there are squash that get up to about 1,000 pounds too, like green ones, but it's another line. But everyone right now is using that same line from Howard Dill. So when you go to those pumpkin shows, they always have the Howard Dill Award winner. It's the orangest, roundest pumpkin, because most of those pumpkins are just so heavy they actually squish down like a pancake. They're just flat because they can't support the massive weight on those. But when you have the skin on those are about 8 to 10 inches still. I mean, they're huge. And when they're growing, like I had one pumpkin growing about 20 to 22 pounds a day. You can physically see it growing during the day. From the morning to the afternoon, you can see it growing. And those are like 20 pounders. When you get up to like the 50 pounds a day, like the 2,000-pound pumpkins, they're growing. Like a time-lapse camera, you can see the thing moving.
Do you have to give it a lot of water? I'm sure. Like you have to actually
You go through
water.
a lot of water. I mean, it just sucks it up and it produces massive fruit. That's why it needs tons of nutrients. That's why it needs tons of water. I mean, to gain 20 pounds a day, yeah.
So you're probably doing drip irrigation or something?
I do both. I do anything that can give it water, but disease and powdery mildew usually kills off most of your pumpkins. It's how long can you keep your pumpkin alive and the fruit alive before the plant dies, and then you have your pumpkin, you bring it to competition. So
Dang, that is so cool. I wonder if Howard Dill's pumpkin had some growth gene that didn't stop growing. You know what I mean? Maybe it had a mutation in the growth gene that just said keep going no matter what, and he found it.
and there's 2 or 3 books. There's an author that just went into it because he was just fascinated by it. I forget which one. I own 1 or 2 of them, but you can get them from the library usually too. But he talks about the history, and Howard Dill just found one line that he liked and kept growing that pumpkin, and it might have been a mutation. And the largest pumpkin he ever grew was only like 300 or 400 pounds, but they used those seeds, and he would send them everywhere across the US. And slowly over time, we got what we have today, which is like, I think 2701 last year, something like that.
Wow. That's
But
so
it's all
cool.
genetics, and it wasn't like genetic manipulation. It was literally just picking the prime pumpkin every single year that was bigger and using that seed every single time and continue using that cultivar.
Selective breeding, basically.
Yeah,
but
selective.
Also, you're not really breeding because you're kind of cloning. Well, you're breeding from the exact same stock. Like you're choosing where it's the pollen's coming from, which is from that plant also, right?
There's self-pollinating, and then there's others, because there's
Oh.
certain pumpkins, like a lot of people like really orange pumpkins, so they only stick with those. Others have thicker skin, they'll use those. So it's the same original line, but certain pumpkins just stand taller. Some has thicker skin. Some do better in certain areas. Like they always say, grow the ones from Indiana first, because they're used to this environment too. That seed was used to this environment rather than picking one from California or Wisconsin. Like it's just different environment. So but yeah, they cross-pollinate all the time. And when you enter yours into competition, they want to know what your male and female were, so that they can keep track of all the genetics, even within that group.
Amazing.
That's cool. That's so cool. I feel that way about bees. I always try to get Indiana bees and grow Indiana bees, but it is easier to buy your bees from the South because South get bees faster, because right now the bees are already breeding down in the South. You know what I mean? So they're faster to make queens, but there is something to local genetics to know it's going to work. That's cool. Thanks for sharing all that, man. I love learning about all this stuff. Annual plants differ from perennials in that annuals complete their life cycle in 1 year. Perennials live 3 or more years. Annuals come back up every year, while perennials must be replanted each year. Annual weeds are more difficult to control than perennial weeds. And annuals produce seed once per year, and perennials produce seed several times per year. Which one is the true one?
I'll go with A.
That's right. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about annuals and perennials? What's everybody planting right now? Any perennials?
Too early for me.
I just bought a spice bush and I guess I'm getting woodies. What are they called? Spice bush, a pagoda dogwood, and I got a serviceberry. So hopefully the birds will like it. I got them up at the Cool Creek Nature Center up near Carmel on Sunday. Why should you keep the leaves as dry as possible when watering? Just like Corey was saying. Is it insects are attracted to wet leaves? Wet leaves encourage disease development. The weight of the water might damage the leaves or stems, or all of the above. Which one?
B.
B. That's right. B. Might encourage that powdery mildew. But obviously, it rains. You're going to get water sometimes. Just try not to do it a lot. Just try to keep the water off the leaves as much as you can, but you can't always keep that from happening. Oh, Casey's starting seeds starting some flowers from seed. What kind? Casey, can you share?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I've got probably 30 types that I'm working on. So, because I have a cut flower garden. So, got like zinnia, some different sunflowers, yarrow, cress, that's not a flower, but amaranth, celosia. Oh man, so many things. Can't
That's
even think of-
awesome. Do you make bouquets for people?
Yeah, so I started last year, just in my backyard, and there was one weekend where, or no, one day that I just took like 8 bouquets to people, but I was taking them all throughout the season, but that one day it was like, yes, I got so many.
Oh, so you like making them?
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun.
You'll have to share some pictures with us if you don't mind. I would love to see them on the Facebook page of your bouquets, if you have any.
Yep. Well, not right. I have plenty of pictures.
Good. I love pictures. Yes. If you
Yes.
don't mind sharing, that'd be awesome. Thank you. All right. Now here's a good question. How do we correctly water a container? Has anybody ever bought one of those, like, I love those wave petunias, the containers you hang outside and you have to water it every single day. How do you know you're watering it enough?
Well, first of all, I make sure it needs water. So now it stick the finger in. Probably needs water if it's one of those, and I just I'd water low under the plant
Mhm.
till the water starts to emerge from the bottom, and then I let it drain.
That's exactly right.
I don't know if it's right, but that's the way I do it.
That's really true. That's what they say. Water until it comes out the bottom.
Well, I think she talked last night about overwatering and underwatering. I just know when it gets hot here, I don't ever seem to overwater. I
think you're
just gotta
right.
make sure I get it in the right way so the plant doesn't get drowned.
I think you're right. Well, especially with those annuals, pretty much they need the water to keep blooming because they continuously bloom. So I don't think you can overwater those if there's holes at the bottom. And
I
you're
also,
doing,
I
ahead.
also, people think I'm kind of weird, but I can also walk around the plants and they'll tell me they're thirsty.
That's okay. That's not weird. I
They
think there's
just,
things
they look like they're sending mental images. Give me a drink. And I go,
I think
okay.
there's things we don't understand. I would never judge that, Jackie. Do you guys ever use fertilizer sticks or spikes? Because I like the Job ones. I mean, obviously I don't work for Job or anything like that, but when people ask, they're really nice. They like at Walmart, they look like weird little sticks, but they're handy for those fancy things you hang out on your porch, and you want them to last because you pay $30 for them and you want those wave petunias to keep coming. So it basically says how long it lasts. It's about like 6 for a huge one, 6 little sticks, and you put them around the container, and then you have to do it in about 6 more weeks. So put it on your calendar. But they're pretty inexpensive and they're pretty handy. So I like them, but and then you just have to keep watering. So maybe I'll feel like buying, I don't know. I just turned my thesis into my committee yesterday. So I'm actually starting to feel like a human being who actually might dust her house after 3 years, maybe. But dust is still going to be there, obviously. But maybe I'll actually clean. Maybe I'll do something fun like have flowers. I don't know. We'll see.
Plant your seeds. That'll be more fun than dusting.
Yeah, my husband actually planted some, I don't know where he even got it, some seeds in one of our butterfly gardens. So we'll see what grows. He's more of a green thumb than I am. So I'm very thankful that he does that.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Mark all that apply. Herbaceous plants. Do herbaceous plants have stems that increase in size each year? No.
I
What about,
imagine
they might,
somebody might, but I go, no.
yeah, I think they're thinking about woody plants probably. So
Okay.
herbaceous plants don't. But what about may have horizontal stems such as rhizomes and stolons?
Yes.
Yes. May have a few leaves that stay green all winter. Does anybody have any what's that? Oregano that stays green where you live? Do you have oregano at your house? Mine stays green all the time. I don't know why. It's in like a happy place. Does anybody else have?
My heuchera will have their leaves. They don't always die all the way back.
Oh, what is that? What is that? What's
mean,
that
what
look
is
like?
it?
I forget. Let me look it up. Heuchera. I didn't even know how that's how you pronounce it.
Corbel,
Oh, yeah. So sometimes you'll see its leaves. What color are your leaves?
whatever colors I can find.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's greens, pinks, purples, reds.
Purples. And sometimes
orange.
yours will last all winter.
I will see their leaves.
Yeah.
And they give me hope that there's life somewhere under all that
Yep.
stuff.
That's true.
So
Elaine,
how-
just go
Go
ahead.
ahead. We're good.
What other things might keep a little bit of green? Oh, Gwen said she bought some of those corbels in purple.
Yep.
That's
I
cool.
just love all the colors of the corbels.
Yes. So yes, that does have some leaves that'll stay green all winter. They may not, but they may have buds below ground in winter. Yep.
Yep.
What about are often used in flower gardens? Yes, of course.
You know,
And what about do not get bigger year after year? That's the nice thing about plants. They do get bigger year after year, and you can just spread them out and share them with people. Anybody have any questions about any of that, those quiz questions? Where'd you put your heuchera? I think that's so cool. I didn't know how to pronounce that. Where'd you
That's
put
what I
yours,
said.
Gwen?
I bought it, but I haven't put in the ground, but it's going at the front of our farm. We have a gate and round walls, and I'm gonna put it there where I mulch.
Oh, cool. Nice. Elaine just had Elaine Whitfield. She came to one of our meetings and she had a walk in the Thornwood Preserve on Sunday, and 21 people came. But it sounds like there was a lot of neat plants blooming in the woods. It's like some trout lily weren't blooming yet, but they had their leaves up, and there was some hepatica growing. So that's cool. Let me show you what a hepatica looks like. And they didn't know that that was there, the hepatica. And it actually is growing more because they're getting rid of more of the invasives. Let me share my screen. Here it is. It can come up as purple and pink or white. And sounds like a lot of people were very interested in knowing why they're all different colors, but she said that's just how they are. So I thought that was cool. So she found a lot of those in Thornwood. And she's going to have another walk at the end of April because these ephemerals only last for about a couple weeks and they'll change to a different type of flower. I mean, other flowers will pop up and you won't see these flowers again until next year. And there's one, it's called a trout lily. I have to show you this. Maybe I've told you this before, but trout lilies, they take up to 7 years, actually 7 years before they first flower. And then after that, they'll flower every year after that. But they have these little speckled leaves that make people think of trouts. And so that's why it's called a trout lily. But sometimes they're yellow and sometimes they're white. And I forget which is least common, but one of them is less common than the other. But they'll be coming up in a couple weeks in Indy, over here where we live. So I think that's interesting. I know that there's a place down in South Carolina that are trying to grow these, but obviously it's really hard to make a living as a nursery person growing these if it takes 7 years for them to flower, because people don't want to wait that long. So I thought that was cool that it takes that long, and that's a really patient flower. But obviously it's also growing by rhizomes under the ground too. So it's growing asexually, but the flower will help it grow sexually when it does flower. Get to talk about the birds and bees a lot when you're talking about plants.
The question I would pose is, do you have a source for wildflowers types that are native here? I enjoy seeing those little surprises pop up in my lawn under the trees. So
That's wonderful.
when I was a kid, I always wanted Jack in the Pulpit. If I could ever find those, I'd make sure they were protected too,
Yes.
because they're just fascinating.
Yep, there is some Jack in the Pulpit around these woods around here. My actually, Elaine shared the other day, and let me get her references. She has a really good book that she likes. And let me get it for you. She says she actually wrote this entire awesome PowerPoint called Into the Woods, and she shared a lot of pictures. She shared this last March at our education meeting, because every month the Master Gardeners Association have an education meeting. And Bobby, would you mind sharing the link for the YouTube video for the interns so they can see that, just in case, because that'd be nice for them to be able to watch. But let me share some references that she shared, Jackie, in chat. The first one, Michael Hamoya, that's who she really likes. It's Wild Flowers and Ferns of Indiana Forests, a field guide by Michael Hamoya. And she said that she likes that he has it so that it's organized by colors on the outside of the book. So if you have a purple flower, you go to the purple of the color if you have not color blindness. So that's not good for people who are colorblind. But then if you go there, the very first ones will come out in spring, and then they're chronologically ordered to be coming out in Indiana when they're coming out, basically, if they come out later in the spring. And so you can then look at that color of the flower, then go find that in there. She said that's a wonderful field guide. She loves that one. So that first one, Michael Hamoya, but then she shares a few others, Wildflower, the Eastern United States, and then one just for trilliums.
Okay.
Yep.
The other fascinating thing I have in my yard is mushrooms. I have mushrooms that pop up in all shapes and colors. Last year, I had the huge round ones that formed a fairy ring.
Oh, interesting. Cool. Yes,
That's
people are afraid of mushrooms.
Well, I don't mess with them, but I find them interesting when they choose where to come up. I imagine that's where some dead roots of trees that I've had somebody's cut down over the years.
Probably. Yep. It's doing its job by breaking it down. Yep. Anybody have any other questions or anything?
Thank you.
No problem. I love talking about this stuff. Anybody have any questions about the plant hardiness zones? Oh, thanks, Bobby. Bobby shared the YouTube video. Thanks, Bobby. So that's Elaine sharing about her ephemerals. It might be public. Is it open to everyone that you can search for it, Bobby? I think you're right. I think you said it is. And it's just on our Purdue Extension, Hancock County YouTube page. There's a few Master Gardener videos on there.
It's public.
Okay, thank you. So you can probably find more things there if you wanted to watch it. I don't know if you guys are like this, but sometimes I just like to play videos when I'm maybe doing laundry or something like that. I don't even always watch it. I just listen to it. So, all right. I want to introduce Tony. Tony just joined us not too long ago. Are you on your lunch break, Tony? Oh,
All right, getting off mute.
no problem. Are you on your lunch break, Tony?
Yes, I was looking for the Purdue Extension YouTube channel so I can like it. So,
oh, good. So you're there. Good. Awesome. So Tony you'll have to introduce yourself, Tony. I'm glad you're here. And so you're going to share about what project you're working on as a Master Gardener, and you have to tell us when you took your class and stuff like that. But yes, thank you. Bobby mentioned that last year's videos are on there too. So we tried to make it available to people who maybe can't come to the education meeting right away, but then you can watch it and you get education hours. So, all right, Tony, go ahead and introduce yourself if you don't mind.
okay. So Tony May, I live up in McCordsville, actually between McCordsville and Fortville, up here in the northwest county or portion of the county. And I took the Master Gardener class in 2020 and then just completed my hours. So I'm official. So what I've been working with are community gardens, and the one I'm specifically working with now is at the Hancock County Health's Wellness Center there in McCordsville. We were approached by the dietitian. She wanted to put in a vegetable garden and a sensory garden. And her goal was really to provide just fresh vegetables to the clients at the Wellness Center. So I'm still working with her because I'm not sure she understands her plan, but so we helped her select materials for the beds. We helped her find a source for the soil. We helped kind of map out where she should put it based on lighting, sun, and then what plants to plant with each other. There's certain plants that are companion plants that like to be next to each other, and other plants that you don't want to put next to each other. So we're kind of helping her with all of that, and we're actually writing this up in a document that will become a template that we can then hand to future gardens. We'll get this kind of a request. So that's her goal. Plus her goal, she's also does cooking demonstrations in the wellness center. And so she's also wanted to grow some herbs. So we're talking about how you plant basil in with the tomatoes and all that, they're companion plants. And so that's the kind of stuff that we're doing with her, as well as a watering plan, a maintenance plan. And the thing I think she doesn't really totally understand, because she's new to gardening. She's never had a vegetable garden before. And I don't know that she understands how much work it's going to be. And right now she's planning on doing the bulk of it herself, which it's 3 4x8 beds, which my backyard garden is bigger than that. So it's probably okay, but it's still a lot of effort when you have to keep up on the weeding, and you have to keep up on watering and the harvesting. So hopefully she can get some help there. I believe she's working with the high school, Mount Vernon High School, to get some students to come out and help set up the garden, move dirt and plant and things like that. So, and then also on the other side of the building, she's wanting to put a sensory garden in. So some plants at the it's right at the, if you've ever been there, there's a childcare area with big windows out on that side of the building. And she wants to have some things out there that would attract butterflies and attract bees, and that the kids could see from the windows. So we're also helping her set up that and choose what plants she should plant in there. What else, Lace? That's kind of
so you're doing a great job. Like, you're basically running this committee. This is your volunteer time.
Yep.
And so I know it's not easy, and I just really appreciate it.
But the level of expertise on the panel, I mean, I'm always impressed with some of the master gardeners that are on the committee. I'm heading the committee, but I was an intern when I started heading the committee. So there's a lot, I'm learning a lot just going through this process. It's just amazing. The other community garden I've been involved with is the Vernon Township Community Garden. We established that 2 years ago, and we learned a lot. We learned a lot about how not to do stuff. It was set up as 4x8 plots, and then we sold, rented plots to people to come in and plant their own vegetables or flowers or whatever they want to come in and plant. And then we set aside about a quarter of them for the food pantry. And the idea was that, well, everybody will come out, and when they come out to work on their plot and weed and water, they'll just weed and water some of the food pantry plots. Well, that didn't happen. It ended up being a lot of work for a handful of people to manage those other plots. So last year we went to 8x8 plots. These are in the ground. They're not raised beds. They're in the ground. And we got people to sign up for the food pantry plots. So I was cucumbers. So I had the cucumber plot. I planted it, I watered it, I took care of the weeds, and I harvested. But there were some other plots that either didn't have volunteers to take care of them, or they just didn't take care of them. So again, it was a learning year last year, and really around organization. And so I took the Grass to Garden course that the Master Gardeners offers, and that's been great. Had I had that course 2 years ago, we definitely would have done a lot different way of setting up the community garden. So the township sold that building, and they're now establishing another community garden on an acre. They have an acre of land. They're not going to put out an acre of these plots for vegetables. And so I've been working with them to, again, try to put a little more structure in place so we can make sure things are taken care of, but also to set aside some of the land for a pollinator garden. Last year, the library had programs out at the garden. So they'd bring the kids out, and they'd walk them through and show them how tomatoes grow and how green beans grow and all this stuff. And so I'm also talking to them about putting a sensory garden in, something where the kids can get in and they can feel the different leaves, and they can feel the different fruits and smells and tastes and all that stuff. And so that's gonna be part of the new community garden. And then there'll be the standard plots for people to plant their own vegetables. but it's definitely a work. And I think a lot of people get into this and they don't realize if you don't go out there for 2 weeks to weed, it can be pretty, I mean, I'm out there every couple of days. The one in the backyard, I'm out there probably every day, just kind of spending 10 minutes on it. Yeah, I think a lot of people like the idea of gardening, but then when they really get into it and realize that they have to be out there more often, and then it gets overwhelming and they just abandon the plot. So that's the kind of thing we're working on. So I think partly what I'd like to do as we kick off this next community garden would be to have a talk and tell people that this is what you can expect, this is what you should be looking for, and make sure they go into it kind of like eyes wide open kind of thing. So those are the 2 community gardens I've been involved with up here in the northwest of the county.
You've done a lot, Tony. You've learned a lot in 2 years. Can you share, how do they water at the community? How will they have water at the community garden?
That's a challenge with the new location for the Vernon Township Garden. And so we're working through that. Before it was right up against the township building, and then we just ran a hose out. And then actually the first year we had people taking buckets over and watering. But last year we ran a big hose out and they could use that. And then with the McCordsville Wellness Center garden, she's putting the plots right next to where there's water access.
Good.
I also talked to her about making sure that she works with the landscaping company, that they're not spraying a bunch of chemicals over there, and how they're mowing and how they're making sure that anyway, make sure that they know that. And so what things can we do like in between the beds to make sure we're just making it easier for them to mow, right? We don't want to make it harder on the mowing crew, but at the same time, we also don't want them spraying chemicals into the garden. So
it's all about communication and organization.
Yep,
A lot of times, even more than just growing plants. So that's what volunteers for Master Gardeners, you may do even things that aren't about growing plants. You know what I mean? It's about the, communication, making a plan, and sounds like you've learned a lot, Tony. And yeah. Thanks for sharing all that.
And even as challenging as the first 2 years for the township garden were, I mean, I think in 2020, we donated 300 pounds of food to the
That's wonderful.
pantry. And I think last year it was closer to 500 pounds of food.
So where do you take it up there?
Up here in the Fortville area, they've created kind of a coalition of food pantries, because there were like 3 or 4 of them. And so we take them to one of the churches that hands out food, and we coordinate with them. I think they hand out on Tuesdays, and so we offer food on Mondays, so they can. And in some cases, if we really have the time, we'll separate the stuff out, right? So we'll create a bag with some tomatoes and some beans and some cucumbers, and then just hand that to them. If we don't have the time, then we just hand them all the raw vegetables, and they have to kind of sort it out.
That's cool.
But yeah, it's really rewarding. I mean, gardening to me has always been rewarding, right? To be able to walk out into my yard and pick a tomato and come in and make a sandwich. I mean, I love that. And then the added thing of being able to support food pantries has really been very rewarding.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Tony.
And the teaching other people how to garden. I've got a lot more to learn about the yard, and the landscaping gardening. I mean, I've been focused on the vegetable gardening, but there's so much to learn. Good times.
That's awesome.
I have a couple of comments. One is not everybody's a little red hen. Remember the little red hen story, or is that too old for you guys?
I remember it, but go ahead and tell us. Just
The little
in
red
case.
hen, would grow the food and then grind the wheat, and then everybody was always willing, but standing on the side. And then finally, when it was time to eat the bread, she didn't share the bread. So Tony at least knows how to help people, but not everybody's a little red hen.
Yeah.
The other one is, I think you said something about drastic garden. I wasn't sure if that's what I heard.
Grass to garden. Grass to garden.
Grass to garden.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's how to set up a garden initially, and it's specifically around community gardens.
Well, 2 things I've learned here. When I first moved where I'm at, I had row gardening, which was totally too huge for me to deal with. So now I'm down into raised beds that's my size. So one of the things that people need to understand, I think, is what's manageable for them.
Mm-hmm.
The other one, it's always easy to think one seed is just one seed, but it produces much. The other one, mowing rules in my yard. Anything that I can do mechanically that helps lower the labor, is always a ruling factor for me. And the other one is I cover the ground as best I can. And if I want less weeds, I put things in that are pretty and not everything goes to food. So sometimes just seeing flowers like Stacy's doing cottage gardening, that makes me want to go to the garden as well as the producing the food. So I try to put all the opportunity to feel good in the garden. And that makes me leave my home to go to another place. Otherwise, it's easier to go out in my backyard and just forget the rest of those promises. Good job, Tony.
Yeah, thanks.
That's a really good point. And you know, Jackie, they've shown that, well, especially for pumpkins, and when people are making a lot of pumpkins, they've actually said that having bees, you know, honeybees there is not as good as having a diverse pollinator strip close by, that it brings in native bees. And actually those native bees are better for pollination for those crops than bringing in hives of honeybees and paying for someone to pollinate. So that's been research based. And I'm even a honeybee owner, but it's not great for bees to go to pumpkins. Pumpkins aren't the greatest for bees. I don't know why. Honeybees, I'm not sure. I think it's just not a lot of pollen or something. I'm not really sure. But native bees are the way to go. So Jackie, you having those pollinator places is good for your vegetables. It's proven.
Totally.
So, yeah.
And I also like the idea of the sensory garden, because my favorite thing to do is put my hand over rosemary or sage. It just heals my soul. I'm just telling you. Good stuff.
And I love touching, I don't think these are natives, but those little lamb's ears, how soft those plants are. That's awesome. And you know, it's really good for mental health too, to be outside and touching things and smelling things. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else have questions for Tony? Tony, I know sometimes you also help up there at the Fortville Elementary School when Artists helps. Can you
Yeah,
tell us about that?
Other things, and that's a sensory garden up at Fortville Elementary, back in the back of it. And so we get the students out there, and I worked with the students to weed and trying to point out to them what were weeds and what was plants. And so helping them kind of distinguish, and then the teachers will bring their students out and let them kind of go through the sensory garden on occasion. And then I'm gonna forget, St. Thomas, I think, church asked us to come out, and we walked their property and talk through kind of what would be good plants to put in or what would be good plants to take out. Because that's the other thing we got to deal with is the invasive plants. I've got some stuff in my yard that I still need to eliminate. There's things that look really pretty, but you know, they're just not good for the environment out here.
That's awesome, Tony. And that's what's so nice. That's what happens. People call here and need help, but I can't do it all. And I'm so thankful for the Master Gardeners to step up and do these projects. So thank you, Tony. I appreciate it. Anybody have any other questions? I think Mount Vernon's so cool that they allowed their students to have gardens. There's not any other, well, JB Stevens used to, but I don't think they still do. But hopefully more schools will be open to this for Master Gardeners to have projects if they want to.
Greenfield Central has a greenhouse.
They do. That's FFA, right? The FFA takes care of that.
I'm on the school board up here on Mount Vernon. And so I've been talking to the administration about when are we going to get a greenhouse?
Wow. That'd be cool, Tony.
Yeah.
I wonder, I don't know if equip loans would be helpful. I don't know if you could do that when you're dealing with like a school, but have you ever talked to the NRCS person?
I have not. And Bobby's right. Eastern Hancock also has a greenhouse.
Yes, they do. Yes. Yeah.
My understanding is we had one, and the last time we expanded the high school, we lost it. So we'll get it back.
Good. That's wonderful. Bobby says that's where she buys her flowers when they have their flower sale. Yes. Yes. I mean, there's a lot of ag going on, and those are FFA. The ag students are doing horticulture, but Master Gardeners aren't necessarily in the schools like they are in Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon invites Master Gardeners to help, which I think is cool. Yeah. So, yeah. And we're going to actually have a meeting with some school administrators on April 20th. The Ivy Tech from Anderson is going to come down to our hospital for Career Day. And I hope to encourage and share what junior master gardener opportunities there are, that there's a curriculum that master gardeners can teach to students that actually helps them with STEM, but it also is around plants. So it's on hands-on, but also it teaches them about, science and math and all kinds of cool stuff. So hopefully maybe we'll be able to get involved in more schools, maybe, because I think students love to touch live things and be a part of the world around them. I think they do. And so not every student can be ag person in FFA. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, but the idea of having a small home garden, I mean, anybody can do it. I mean, I've got a friend that lives in a subdivision that does container plants and makes her own salsa. She grows everything she needs for salsa and does it in containers. So it's not like you have to have a whole big yard to be able to put something like this in.
That's awesome. But I think sometimes students need to know that, because like I remember wanting to grow a garden, but my parents were like, no, birds will eat it all. So if I had a teacher that said birds won't always eat it all, or you can do something to keep the birds from it. And I also didn't understand when I had a potato that when I put the potato in the plant in the ground, it wouldn't just make one more potato. I didn't understand how one potato could make one potato, but I learned eventually that one potato can make a lot of potatoes.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that as a kid at all. So I think that I couldn't have been the only one. I can't be the only kid that didn't know. You know what I mean? So thanks, Tony, for all you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anybody
Well, thanks
have-
for inviting me.
Yes. And I love all your presidents. Tony, tell what work you also do in your other hobby.
Oh, my other hobby is I'm a presidential tree buff, and I actually give tours at the Benjamin Harrison House downtown. I'll be down
Oh,
on a Saturday giving tours. That's kind of one of my other interests, and I've given the school groups here at elementary schools go once a year, and I've given the students tours. That's a whole different. That's a whole different thing.
But I love it.
Fourth graders or third graders. But
That's awesome.
yeah, it's just fun to be trying new things.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us for your lunch hour, everybody. I really appreciate it.
I had to update you. One day you asked me, is there any urban gardens? And I said 21st and German Church, and you asked if that was the church garden. It's not, it's Indy East. It's DNR Urban East Garden.
Wow,
I
that's
haven't
cool.
started working it yet, but it's out there. When I drive by regularly to the library, I keep an eye on what they're doing. Right now, it's kind of quiet.
Thanks, Jackie. That's cool.
I always get more excited with more gardens and less concrete.
Yes. There is a lot of concrete in the world, that's for sure. Anybody have anything else before we close? You guys take care of yourself. Stay dry out there. It's
Thank
about
you.
growing weather. Bye, everybody. Take care.